Millionaire stunned to see girl solve $300 million problem in seconds. William stood frozen, eyes locked on the screen. The boardroom buzz had fallen to a thick, suffocating silence. It was supposed to be the moment his elite tech team cracked the impossible. A software glitch threatening to implode his billion-dollar company. Yet after weeks of sleepless nights and endless meetings, the crisis still gnawed at the edges of his empire. Then, out of nowhere, Sophie, the quiet nanny who'd been in the office kitchen moments ago, walked up, laptop in hand, and within seconds, typed out lines of code nobody else even dreamed of. The cursor blinked. The chaos paused. Suddenly, the system whirred back to life. Error messages vanished, and relief crashed over the room, sharp and icy. Whispers erupted. Who is she? Where did she learn to do that? William's jaw clenched tight. This couldn't be real. Sophie, a young woman who dropped out of college to care for her family, had never shown an ounce of tech skill. The way she sat, in her scuffed sneakers and faded hoodie, fingers flying over the keyboard, was like watching a hidden magician unravel a puzzle nobody dared to touch. His heart pounded painfully. The elite engineers, who'd sneered at Sophie's presence, stared wide-eyed, muttering broken apologies. The slick confidence they'd carried dissolved into something raw, a mixture of shock and envy. William felt a lump twist in his throat. A bubbling storm of emotions clashed inside him. Pride, confusion, something fierce and trembling. How did he miss this? How could the woman who cleaned the house, fixed his kids' lunches, and made his life smoother, hold the secret to saving his entire company? The room's air shifted, heavy with tension. Glances snapped between Sophie and William, like sparks ready to ignite. He wanted to step forward, shout out her brilliance, shield he. Power surged erratically before plunging the building into darkness. Heartbeats thudded loud in the blackness. The emergency alarms wailed, tech screens went dark, and in that fractured silence, William heard Sophie's quiet voice. "We've only just begun," she whispered. He swallowed hard. The weight of what this woman meant, the scandal, the incredible talent, the risk, pressed down on him like concrete. Could he trust himself to embrace it? To cross the invisible boundaries that society drew between their worlds. Outside the now darkened windows, the city lights blurred like distant stars. William's chest tightened with fear, and something like hope flickering in the shadows. Tomorrow, at the biggest tech event of the year, everything would change. But for now, the question hung in the air, sharp as a blade. What would happen when a millionaire CEO offers his future, not just business salvation, to a girl in work clothes? And could Sophie say yes before the world around them? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The darkness enveloped them, thick and heavy, like a suffocating blanket. William strained to hear over the wail of the alarms, confusion swirling in his mind. Sophie's words echoed, a promise of hope wrapped in uncertainty. But as the emergency lights flickered on, revealing flashing shadows against the walls, the intensity shifted. It came from the far side of the boardroom. All heads turned, eyes wide with panic. "What was that?" someone shouted, the urgency sharpening their voice. William's heart dropped. He moved instinctively towards the noise, Sophie at his side, both of them creeping closer. The emergency lights cast eerie shadows, flickering like trapped fireflies. In the corner of the room, a figure emerged from the darkness, silhouetted and menacing. "Stop right there," William barked, adrenaline fueling his voice. But instead of stopping, the figure lunged. Shadows twisted as the room erupted in chaos. Fear erupted like a storm. Engineers backed away, shouting about calling security, and someone knocked a chair over, clattering to the ground. Sophie didn't falter. She stepped forward, eyes locked on the intruder. The tension in the room became electric. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Then, in the dim emergency lights, recognition hit William like a punch to the gut. The intruder wasn't a stranger. It was one of his former partners, Derek. The man had been ousted from the company months ago, a casualty of shady dealings and whispered truths. "William," Derek spat, voice dripping with venom. "Thought you could build a company without me? You really want to watch it all burn?" Stunned, William felt a cold hand wrap around his heart. Secrets danced on the edge of his mind, the whispers of deceit and betrayal he'd buried deep. "What are you talking about?" William's voice wavered. It was a question, but he didn't want to hear the answer. Derek's lips curled into a wicked grin. "Oh, you're going to find out soon. Your precious company, it's just the beginning." A feeling of dread clawed at William's insides. He glanced at Sophie. She looked resolute, but confusion flickered across her face. For a brief moment, he saw fear in her eyes. Was it directed at Derek or at him? Then, with a sudden absent-mindedness, Sophie stepped back, her fingers brushing against something at her waist. When she pulled it out, the light flickered just right to reveal a small device. "You're lying," she said, voice low and firm. "You won't destroy this place. Not on my watch." The room fell silent. A bead of sweat trickled down William's neck. Sophie held a remote, the kind they use for emergency shutoffs. The kind the tech team had installed in case of a catastrophic breach. "Sophie, what are you doing?" he whispered, panic threading through him. But before she could respond, the lights went out completely again, swallowed by darkness. William's heart raced. The alarms were still blaring. He couldn't see anything, but he could feel the tension tightening like a noose around them. And then, a blinding flash of light filled the space. It was different. A fiery orange illuminating faces twisted in shock. The screen before them blared an alert. "Security breach initiated. Lockdown in progress." William's breath hitched. In that moment, as stakes skyrocketed, alliances shifted like sand underfoot. Suddenly, the girl who solved a multi-million-dollar problem stood at the center of its potential destruction. But who was she really? More than a nanny, or something darker? As the alarms rang out against the backdrop of chaos, William realized the truth lay tangled in shadows, waiting to be unraveled. What had he stepped into, and could he save not just his company, but the heart of the unexpected alliance growing between him and Sophie before everything fell apart? The chaos exploded like a firework. William's heart raced as the emergency lights stuttered, casting long shadows across the room. His eyes darted between Sophie and Derek. Sophie stood firm, remote in hand, defiance etched across her face. Derek, snarling, appeared ready to pounce. "What do you think you can do?" he taunted, his voice a chilling rasp. Before anyone could respond, the sound of the alarms morphed into something deeper. A low rumble beneath the chaos, like thunder rolling through the earth. Panic spread through the room like wildfire. Engineers backed away, their faces pale, eyes wide as they pressed against each other. "Get back!" William shouted, adrenaline pumping through him. But deep down, he knew this wasn't just a security breach. It was a personal attack, a storm brewing right at the door of his empire. Then, without warning, the ground shook violently. The lights flickered and went dark once more, plunging them into an abyss of uncertainty. A sharp crack sounded, a splintering sound above. William's mind raced. What was happening? He heard Sophie's breath hitch. The panic cut through the darkness. "William!" Her voice trembled. The ceiling above them groaned, and a heavy crack split through the structure. A blinding flash illuminated everything for just a split second. Then, silence. In that stark light, William caught a glimpse of the horror unfolding. A support beam, weakened by the recent crisis, had finally collapsed. It loomed down, a monstrous shadow ready to crush everything. Time slowed. He lunged toward Sophie, arms outstretched, heart pounding against his ribcage. "Sophie, move!" he screamed, but the darkness swallowed his voice. Without thinking, he pushed her aside, feeling the sharp risk of desperation swirling around them like smoke. The beam crashed down, but somehow they stumbled free. All he could see was a rush of movement. A whirlwind of confusion and fear washed over them as they hit the floor, hands covering their heads. And when the dust settled, William's heart sank. Groaning sounds filled the air. Muffled cries of terror erupted all around them. But Sophie and he were untouched, miraculously safe. Then the silence broke. A low rumble morphed into a haunting echo. And a figure clambered through the haze. Light flickered on the screens behind them, revealing a cautious silhouette. "Derek!" William shouted, recognizing the figure. But what he saw next twisted his stomach in knots. The man was trembling, his eyes wide, not with malice, but with fear. "William, I didn't mean. I wanted to help." Derek gasped, and the disbelief flooded the room. "It's bigger than we thought. They're coming for you, and I." William felt a surge of confusion wash over him, a heavy weight pressing down as he took a step toward the fallen figure. "What are you talking about? Who's coming for me?" Derek staggered up, the flickering light illuminating his panic-stricken face. "You don't understand. I didn't betray you. I was trying to protect the company, but they're already inside." Sophie's face lit with understanding, and betrayal etched itself in William's chest. "Inside where?" she asked sharply. "Your system. I thought it was hacked. But it's worse. It's been compromised from the inside out." Derek's voice quivered as he spoke, each word racked with desperation. "They're here already, and they're not just after the company. They're after you both." A wave of fear washed over William, chilling him to the bone. There were secrets swirling around him, truths buried in fire and ash. Was Derek actually trying to help? The lights flickered once more, and as they fought against the darkness, a terrifying realization hit him. Everything he believed, the safety of his world, the loyalty of those around him, had crumbled. Then, silence enveloped them, the atmosphere thick with tension. Who was friend? Who was foe? William turned to Sophie. Her eyes sparkled with an intensity he hadn't seen before. Daring, resolute. "William," she whispered, "we need to act now or we'll lose everything." But what did that really mean? What had he been blind to all along? A ground zero of uncertainty loomed, and the walls were closing in as the shadows shifted around them. In that moment, the truth became a labyrinth, teeth bared and ready to swallow them whole. Would they escape or fall deeper into the dark? The air crackled, heavy with confusion and fear. William met Sophie's eyes, and he felt that steady resolve flicker just a bit. They both knew they were running out of time. "Who's coming for us?" He pressed Derek, his voice tense. "What do you know?" But before Derek could answer, the alarms blared again, louder, more determined. It felt like the walls were closing in. Then a loud crash echoed from the hallway, and all heads turned. The door slammed open, and in burst two security guards, faces twisted in panic. "Get back!" one yelled, raising a flashlight that cut through the darkness. William's heart raced. Had someone breached the perimeter? But the guards were looking not at the chaos ahead, but at Derek, their faces pale. "William, you have to listen." Derek's desperate plea broke the thickening tension. "I swear I was framed. They want me gone and they want you too." Sophie stepped forward, her voice cutting through the haze. "What do you mean? Who is behind this?" But as she spoke, everything changed. A deafening crash shook the boardroom, and suddenly the ground beneath them trembled violently. The lights sputtered, flickered, and died once more. In that instant, shadows danced wildly like phantoms. Then, a spark ignited in the darkness. A figure, not Derek, but a woman, glided forward, eyes lit with a fierce glow. Her hair fell around her shoulders, wild and untamed. There was something both haunting and familiar about her. William's head spun. "You let them think they could pull this off, didn't you?" she spat, her voice a sharp blade slicing through the chaos. Derek froze. "Emily?" William gasped, confusion flooding his mind. She was the partner he'd trusted, who had vanished when he'd needed her most. A heartbeat of silence followed. Feeling like a fist had tightened around his chest, he struggled to process this new reality. "Why are you here?" Derek shrieked, eyes wide with shock. "Why now?" But Emily ignored him, her gaze cutting straight to William. "Because he's right," she said, gesturing toward Derek. "Everything he said is true. I was the one who set him up. I made you believe you were safe, all while I laid the groundwork for their takeover." The room spun. William's stomach dropped as the weight of betrayal crashed over him. The people he'd trusted, the foundations he'd built, were all built on lies. Derek, shaking his head, stumbled back. You were supposed to help us," she sneered, the glow in her eyes darkening. "Helplessness is what they need. It makes the operation easier. You were never meant to find out, but here we are." William took a step back, disbelief raging inside him. The woman he'd defended, who had walked away from it all, had orchestrated the very system that threatened to unravel all he had built. "Why?" he cried. "Why would you do this?" "Because power is everything." Her voice twisted with conviction. "And you were just a stepping stone. Now you've put everything at risk, and I've come to finish it." As another tremor shook the space, a deep crack split into the wall. Sparks flew, illuminating the raw fear in the crowd's eyes. The air stank of smoke. The alarms echoed like a funeral dirge, and panic surged through them. Was there any chance to fight back? Everything William believed shattered in an instant. All at once, he had to not only save his company, but face the insidious truth about the people closest to him. "William, what do we do now?" Sophie's voice trembled, drawing him back, but his mind spun with doubt and betrayal. How could he trust anyone in this crumbling world? As the fire flickered behind Emily, illuminating the dark truth in her eyes, William felt the ground shift below him. Would he protect his empire, or could he even save himself? And most haunting of all, who could he really count on as the shadows closed in? The air crackled, heavy with confusion and fear. William met Sophie's eyes, and he felt that steady resolve flicker just a bit. They both knew they were running out of time. "Who's coming for us?" he pressed Derek, his voice tense. "What do you know?" But before Derek could answer, the alarms blared again, louder, more determined. It felt like the walls were closing in. Then a loud crash echoed from the hallway, and all heads turned. The door slammed open, and in burst two security guards, faces twisted in panic. "Get back!" one yelled, raising a flashlight that cut through the darkness. William's heart raced. Had someone breached the perimeter? But the guards weren't looking at the chaos ahead. They were staring at Derek, their faces pale. "William, you have to listen." Derek's desperate plea broke the thickening tension. "I swear, I was framed. They want me gone, and they want you too." Sophie stepped forward, her voice cutting through the haze. "What do you mean? Who is behind this?" But as she spoke, everything changed. A deafening crash shook the boardroom, and suddenly the ground beneath them trembled violently. The lights sputtered, flickered, and died once more. In that instant, shadows danced wildly like phantoms. Then, a spark ignited in the darkness. A figure, not Derek, but a woman, glided forward, eyes lit with a fierce glow. Her hair fell around her shoulders, wild and untamed. There was something both haunting and familiar about her. William's head spun. "Emily?" he gasped, confusion flooding his mind. She was the partner he'd trusted, who had vanished when he'd needed her most. A heartbeat of silence followed. Feeling like a fist had tightened around his chest, he struggled to process this new reality. "Why are you here?" Derek shrieked, eyes wide with shock. "Why now?" Emily ignored him, her gaze cutting straight to William. "Because he's right," she said, gesturing toward Derek. "Everything he said is true. I was the one who set him up. I made you believe you were safe, all while I laid the groundwork for their takeover." The room spun. William's stomach dropped as the weight of betrayal crashed over him. The people he'd trusted, the foundations he'd built, were built on lies. Derek, shaking his head, stumbled back. You were supposed to help us!" She sneered, the glow in her eyes darkening. "Helplessness is what they need. It makes the operation easier. You were never meant to find out, but here we are." William took a step back, disbelief raging inside him. The woman he'd defended had orchestrated the very system that threatened to unravel all he had built. "Why?" he cried. "Why would you do this?" "Because power is everything." Her voice twisted with conviction. "And you were just a stepping stone. Now you've put everything at risk, and I've come to finish it." As another tremor shook the space, a deep crack split into the wall. Sparks flew, illuminating the raw fear in the crowd's eyes. The air stank of smoke. The alarms echoed like a funeral dirge, and panic surged through them. Was there any chance to fight back? But just then, the lights flickered again, and a red warning light flashed overhead. William squinted into the confusion, and before he could register what was happening, a loud explosion rocked the room. The sound was deafening, a visceral blast that threw them all off their feet. William landed hard against the conference table. Glass shattered, and debris rained down. For a moment, it felt like time stood still, everything suspended in an eerie quiet. But as he pushed himself up, heart racing, a piercing scream cut through the chaos. Sophie, she was trapped underneath a fallen beam, her face contorted in pain, eyes wide with terror. "William," she cried, panic lancing through her voice. "Help me, please." In that instant, everything shifted. Emily's face morphed from cold confidence to stark fear. She darted forward, heart pounding. "Don't!" But William didn't hear her. Every cell in him screamed to save Sophie. The confusion of betrayal fell away, replaced with a singular, burning focus. He staggered toward her, adrenaline kicking in. "Hold on," he shouted, pushing through the chaos, feeling the weight of the rubble press down on his chest. He could see Sophie's trembling hands, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. He had to reach her. With a surge of strength, he grabbed the beam that pinned her down. Heaving, he pushed with everything he had. The world blurred around him as he lifted it just enough for her to wriggle free. But as she scrambled out, gasping for air, William looked up and stopped dead in his tracks. Emily was no longer a shadow in the background. She stood tall, mouth curled into a cruel smile. "You should have let her die." The realization hit him hard as her eyes glimmered with something unsettling. Was it satisfaction? And then, without warning, a group of armed figures swarmed into the room, emerging from the shadows like ghosts. They'd been there all along, and all of it, the chaos, the violence, the lies, had been a meticulously crafted trap. William's heart sank. He had no idea how deep the betrayal ran. Could they escape this time? Or was it over before it truly began? The shadowy figures stepped closer, metallic gleams flashing from their arms. William's blood ran cold. The threat was real now, palpable, and not just a facade conjured by Emily. "Sophie, get back," he shouted, adrenaline pumping into his veins. The fear that clawed at him escalated as the intruders moved into a formation. They weren't just here to gloat. They were here to capture. But Sophie was already on her feet, shaking off the dust. "William, we can't let them." Before she could finish, one of the intruders lunged forward, gripping her arm. "This way," he barked, dragging her back. "No!" William roared, lunging in their direction. But they swept Sophie away, mere steps from him. Panic surged as the room spun, alarms blaring, chaos reigning supreme. Just as despair threatened to pull him under, a roar from Derek shook the air. "William, the system, now!" William turned on instinct to where Derek pointed. The computer screens lit up again, blaring warnings of impending system override. Another figure stepped into the light. Emily's face twisted in shock. "You can't!" she shrieked, hand reaching toward the screens. William glanced at Derek, every fiber of him telling him to trust this moment, to seize control. "We have to act now. We can stop this." He dashed to the nearest console, and as he reached it, the glow from the screens illuminated Derek's face. But there was something wrong. His expression morphed from desperation to a fierce grin. Suddenly, a shot rang out. A muffled pop echoed off the walls. The crowd gasped, but they couldn't see who was hurt. William's heart dropped, a knot forming in his throat. "Derek, no!" "William," Sophie screamed. But it was déjà vu. Sophie was gone. William swirled around, horror crashing over him like a wave. Smoke filled the air, blinding him. He pushed through the chaos, and in that split second, everything flipped. An electric jolt ripped through the floor beneath him. Desks shattered, people screamed, and the room seemed to buckle under an invisible weight. William stumbled back, his mind racing, and then the lights returned, glaring down at a scene that seemed to freeze in time. Derek was down, but not bleeding. He lay utterly still, a smile plastered across his face. "What's happening?" William gasped, shock paralyzing him. "Derek, are you?" A shadow danced behind him. He turned, and suddenly the air crackled with energy. The woman from earlier, the one who had hidden in the chaos, lunged forward. "It's time you knew the truth," she hissed, voice slithering through the static air. Then with a flick of her wrist, the lights erupted in bright, blinding color. Ribbons of light unfurled, exploding in a shower of sparks. Confusion enveloped them all as the truth unfurled like twisted vines. William squinted, disbelief etching itself deep into his mind. The glowing streams twisted, morphing into shapes, digital data morphing on the walls. Words formed, ugly and raw. "You've been set up," Emily's voice pierced through the noise, now ringing with unexpected authority. "This was always about power. You were pawns in a much larger game." William's heart raced. "What do you mean? What game?" Suddenly the screens illuminated names, names he recognized, partners he thought he could trust. It was a web of betrayal, a network right under his nose, an intricate tapestry of lies that included everyone he thought he knew. Sophie's terrified face flashed across the screen. "This isn't happening," she yelled. But her eyes were filled with something more, backed by raw determination. "Trust her," Emily commanded. And something in her eyes shifted. Was it fear? "She's more than you think." With that, everything exploded into chaos again. The intruder shouted, trying to reorder the panic. but it came crashing down on them. Derek's facade shattered. He was not who anyone thought. And then it hit him, like the slam of a door. Sophie had known. The flicker of her confidence during the ordeal was no coincidence. She had been playing the game too. As realization washed over him, it felt like ice poured down his spine. The twist, the betrayal that he had feared was real, and its consequences were more dire than he could grasp. "Who are you really?" he whispered, eyes locked on Sophie, as the room erupted into chaos again. What had he uncovered? Was Sophie the key to it all? And in that electrifying moment, with everything on a knife's edge, William realized the real game was only just beginning. The air crackled, heavy with confusion and fear. William met Sophie's eyes, both of them realizing they were standing on the edge of something monumental, potential chaos or salvation. But just as he opened his mouth to strategize, Emily launched into a wild, unexpected tirade. "You're all fools," she spat. "You think you can fight me? You think any of this matters? You're all just players in a game far beyond your understanding." And then, with a swift motion, she reached into her pocket, pulling out a small device, silver and ominous. "This," she said, holding it up for all to see, "is the activation code to a protocol that will bring down everything you've built." Derek gasped, eyes wider than William had ever seen. "Emily, no! Don't do this!" But it was too late. She smiled, a smile that twisted further into something dark and feral. "Oh, but I must. I spent years running this game, and it's time to turn the tables." The room shook again. A deep rumble filled the air, vibrating through William's bones. Up above, the ceiling threatened to crack. Sparks flew from the walls, igniting a fire of fear inside him. Suddenly, the screens flared again, but not with names. This time, they showed the countdown. 10 seconds until the protocol activated. "Wait! Don't!" he yelled, a surge of desperation coursing through his veins. He sprinted forward, arms outstretched, but Emily was quicker. With a flick of her wrist, she hit the button. Nothing happened at first. Then, silence. An unbearable absence of sound filled the room, and for a fleeting moment, hope flickered in their chests. But in the very next instant, a blinding flash erupted from the device. It swallowed everything in light. William stumbled back, shielding his eyes as chaos erupted around him. When his vision cleared, the scene had morphed, twisted into something else. Smoke filled the air, swirling like ghostly phantoms. Shadows danced along the walls, but the sounds, they were different now. "William!" Sophie's voice sliced through the haze, frantic and desperate. "Look!" Across the room, the monitors displayed not just warnings, but images, familiar faces, but darker. There, hauntingly, was his mother, and beside her, Sophie's unsuspecting father. They exchanged looks of fear, but not at the chaos unraveling before them. No, they were staring at something else, something they were sworn to protect. "Those are," William's breath caught in his throat. They were both former best friends, now turned into oblivious prisoners of a scheme none of them had even seen coming. Secrets rarely stay buried. Emily seized the moment. "They've been in this game with me all along. Think they had your back? Think again." "No!" Derek shouted, shaking his head, disbelief distorting his features. "They were innocent." But as William's heart raced with anger and betrayal, a sudden realization hit hard. It wasn't just Emily playing the game. The shadows stretched, and as they began to shift, William felt the ground shake beneath him. An earthquake of revelations. The footage shifted, flickered, revealing blueprints. Dark plans scribbled in chaotic handwriting. The ink was unmistakably Sophie's father's. William's stomach twisted, eyes darting between Derek and Sophie. "What did you do?" he whispered in disbelief, as all the truth came crashing down. Sophie's eyes widened, and in that split second, her face transformed. The fire behind her eyes dimmed, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. "It's not what you think," she gasped. "We had no choice. Our families, they were forced into this." The world spun. William felt that lump in his throat, tightening like a vice. Doubt seeped into him like poison. Every belief he held was unraveling. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered, the foundation of his heart crumbling away. Before she could reply, the power surged back momentarily, and someone cried out from the crowd, "Look out!" The intruders, emboldened amidst the confusion, surged forward, weapons drawn. The room fractured into chaos again, screams reverberating against the walls. And then a loud crash echoed as the roof began to tremble even more violently. The countdown flashed ominously. 5, 4. William's mind raced, desperation flooding his senses. Trust, lies, family, survival, what did any of it mean anymore? He needed to act, but the ground shifted beneath them, visions of his life collapsing. Then he heard Sophie's voice again, calm yet urgent. "You have to believe me, William. We can still—" But before she could finish, the lights died, plunging them into darkness once again, and he knew they were running out of time. Would they all fall together? Would he be trapped in this nightmare of betrayal? As the countdown whispered down to 0, the atmosphere prickled with uncertainty, and the true game of survival began anew. The lights fizzled out completely, and fear wrapped around William like a thick fog. He wasn't just in a fight for survival anymore. He was in a race against time. The countdown ticked in his head, just as the alarms blared overhead, drowning everything else out. Sophie clutched his arm, her face pale with desperation. "We can't let her win, William. We have to do something." Her voice trembled, but her grip was strong. "Just stay close," he yelled, trying to funnel the panic into something manageable. He could see the intruders, shadows lurking at the edges, waiting for a moment of weakness. As the countdown reached 2 seconds, every breath filled the room with tension. He could already see the fear in the faces of his team, the despair creeping into their eyes. The electrical hum in the air carried a harsh echo of finality. And then it happened. A deafening explosion shattered the moment. The walls of the conference room trembled under the force. Glass exploded, raining down like deadly confetti. People screamed, chaos erupted. William felt a surge of heat, pushing him forward. When the dust settled, an eerie silence enveloped them as they struggled to comprehend. William blinked, coughing through the debris, vision hazy. And then he saw her. Emily, standing amid the carnage, unscathed but transformed. Her expression wasn't one of a villain anymore. It was something deeper. Grief? Regret? Like someone who had lost everything and could no longer conceal it. "Emily? What?" William's words trembled, his heart racing. But before he could finish, she raised her hands in surrender. "You don't understand," she cried, voice cracking. "I can stop it. I didn't want any of this." Sophie sputtered through the dust. "Stop what? You just detonated a bomb in here. What game are you still playing?" Emily's gaze darted between William and Sophie, desperation palpable. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. I was trying to protect you both." As the dust settled, William felt something shift in the dark. There was something in Emily's eyes, a truth he hadn't caught before. And then, suddenly, a bright red light erupted behind her. William's throat constricted. It was the device. It hadn't just activated the protocol. It was triggering something much worse. "Get down," he yelled, shoving Sophie to the floor as shockwaves rippled through the air. In that instant, everything changed. A figure, clad in a black suit, burst through the ruined doorway like a ghost, face obscured. The voice was low, cold, and unmistakable. "Emily, it's time to finalize our deal." All heads turned as he stepped into the light, and every ounce of blood drained from William's face. Marcus? The revelation hit like a freight train. His old mentor, a man who had taught him the ins and outs of the business world, now stood before him, clearly in cahoots with Emily. "William, over your head," Marcus said, smirking. "This was never about you. It's about power and control." William's stomach twisted. "You were behind this. You betrayed me." "No, my dear boy. I merely recognized potential," Marcus replied coolly, eyes glinting with malice. "With the right strategy, this was bound to happen. I needed someone to clear the path, and Emily was a perfect pawn. No one suspected her." William's heart raced. Everything felt upside down. "You set this all up?" Suddenly, Emily seized the moment. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was helping. But they've used me too. I'm just as trapped as you are." Dread gripped William. Trust shattered. Everything he thought he knew crumbled into dust. It wasn't just the company at stake anymore. It was their lives, their relationships, and hopes, intertwined in a web of deceit. Marcus smiled, the darkness thickening around them. "Now the real game begins. Trust is a foolish thing, William." As the countdown clock flashed wildly, now stuck at 0, hope faded. A surge of fear gripped him as he faced both Emily and Marcus. Who could he trust in a room filled with secrets? Would anyone make it out alive? With the air heavy with betrayal, he took a step back. Everything was changing. And as shadows loomed closer, the chilling question hung in the air. Who were they really now? The lights flickered back on, illuminating the chaos in the room. William's heart drummed in his chest. He faced the treachery head-on, bearing the weight of 1,000 betrayals. Emily's smirk seemed sharper than ever, a dagger glinting under fluorescent light. The revelation that Marcus was behind all of it set his mind ablaze. He couldn't reconcile the mentor he once trusted, now a puppet master pulling strings that threatened their lives. "Why?" he asked, voice strained. "You had everything. Why destroy everything we built?" "You naive boy," Marcus replied, his tone condescending. "It was never yours to begin with. Power is a game. I merely showed you the board." Sophie, still shaken, squeezed his hand tightly. "William, we need to get out of here. Now!" But just as they turned, the whole building shook again, this time fiercer. Cracks ran along the walls, splintering the air with a new surge of dread. The countdown had vanished, replaced by the static hum of fear rippling through the crowd. "Run!" Derek shouted, voice laced with urgency. He made a move toward the door, but the air felt thick with panic and confusion. People darted in all directions, adding to the chaos. As William grabbed Sophie's arm, preparing to sprint, a scream pierced the atmosphere. "Look out!" A massive chunk of the ceiling broke loose, crashing down. Time slowed as he turned to see the debris hurtling toward them. "No!" he yelled, shoving Sophie forward just as he dove to the side, the world igniting in a haze of dust and screams. They barely rolled free, and as the clouds of chaos settled, they gasped for breath. But upon looking around, everything felt wrong. Around them, the group of intruders started retreating in a panic, glancing nervously at Emily. There was a sudden shift in the atmosphere, a shared fear that slithered through the air. William's pulse quickened. What was happening? And then a piercing scream rang out again, but it was different. This time, it cut through the noise like a knife. Everyone turned to see Emily clutching her head, backing away into a corner like a wild animal. "It's not what you think," she cried, eyes rolling back briefly before locking onto William. "You've got to believe me." In that frantic moment, something within her cracked open. "They've been watching us. There's a bigger force at play. I... Suddenly, a flash of blue light erupted from her. For a heartbeat, it was blinding. Then, when everyone blinked through the confusion, Emily wasn't Emily anymore. She transformed into something else entirely, unearthly, a figure cloaked in shadows, face obscured. No, no, no! William stumbled back, every horror he'd faced focused into one crystalline moment. It was like looking at the edges of a storm. "William," Sophie cried, her voice shaking. "What's happening?" The shadows pulsated, taking shape around Emily, and the intruders froze, fear plastered across their faces. "You think you're ready for this?" the figure said, voice distorted, echoing like thunder through a canyon. "You're nothing more than pawns in a much darker game." The electric tension surged as the intruders dropped their weapons, eyes wide with fear, like deer caught in headlights. "Run!" one shouted, scrambling back toward the exit. But William, rooted in horror, couldn't look away. "What are you?" "I am part of the reckoning," the figure said, and with a lift of its hand, the room filled with swirling shadows. "Your truths are unraveling, William." The world spun. Clarities turned to chaos, each person in the room suddenly more than they seemed. Derek, Sophie, everyone but him was drawn into this unfolding nightmare. Yet when William blinked back to sanity, a thought pierced through the scrambling chaos. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something far more dangerous. But before he could grasp the implications, the shadows surged, and the reality shattered like glass around them. William realized then that there were truths buried beneath every betrayal, a shadowy past woven into each of their lives. Would they move forward to uncover it, or be swallowed whole by the darkness? Everything he'd believed, all the choices he'd made, now hung in a fragile balance. In that moment, he felt the ground shift beneath him again. This time, it wasn't just an earthquake. It signaled the beginning of a reckoning, where nothing would ever be the same again. The shadowy form of Emily writhed in the chaos, rippling like smoke. The tension coiled tighter around William, winding into a knot of fear and confusion. Sophie stood near him, her eyes wide, heart pounding, a mixture of courage and panic. "Is this really happening?" William shouted over the din. "We need to get out of here." "Stay close," Sophie yelled back, grabbing his hand. Marcus smirked, stepping further into the room, the gleam in his eyes growing darker with every passing second. "You think you can escape? You're trapped in this web, just like everyone else. Isn't that right, Emily?" The twisting shadows hissed, and suddenly, Emily's form shimmered back into her human self. "I didn't want this, Marcus. I tried to protect them." William and Sophie exchanged glances. Caught between allies and enemies, the world around them felt like it was imploding. "Your attempt to shield them only made things worse," Marcus scoffed, inching closer. "It's time to choose sides." The walls shook again, and every scream echoed like a siren. William grabbed Sophie, thrusting her behind him as the air crackled with electricity. The figure that was Emily turned towards them, eyes filled with something human. Regret? Confusion? "William," she begged, "if you want to survive this, trust me." But trust felt so far away. He wrestled with uncertainty, feeling the walls closing in. The other intruders, now frenzied, were backing away, eyes darting between Marcus and Emily. Fear rippled through them like wildfire. "Now!" Derek shouted, voice fierce against the tremors. He lunged towards the emergency exit. "We have to go." And just like that, the collective instinct kicked in. William surged forward, pulling Sophie along, weaving through the chaos of bodies. He could feel the heat rising, the furnace of emotions and the smoke of conflict clouding their escape. But Emily's voice spiked above the din. "You can't leave yet. We must finish this now." And then silence. A hush fell over them like a thick blanket. Everyone froze. It was as if the very air had turned to glass. "What are you talking about?" William gritted his teeth. every fiber of his being urging him to flee. "The truth about everything," she cried. And desperation twisted her features. "It's not just about us anymore. The people you love, your families, they're tied to this." His heart raced. How? Just then, an emergency alarm blared to life again, the piercing sound shaking them from their paralysis. "Now, now!" Marcus shouted, forcing a smile that cut like a knife. "Chaos is what we thrive on, right?" Suddenly, Emily snapped. "Enough!" A wave of energy rippled through the room, pushing Marcus back. "I'm done being your pawn." With a blinding flash, the twisting shadows coiled in on themselves. The figure of Emily morphed, even as William and Sophie, caught in the maelstrom, felt the weight of their choices crushing down on them. "Run!" he yelled, adrenaline sparking in his veins. They dashed toward the exit, their hearts drumming in unison as they dodged falling debris. Smoke filled the room, obscuring their path. They could hear the panicked shouts of their colleagues echoing in the chaos. But when they burst through the emergency exit into the cold night air, they found themselves alone, panting with disbelief and relief. The cool breeze washed over them, rounding them in a whirlwind of fears that still loomed behind. Sophie turned to William, fear mixed with something softer in her eyes. "What now? What do we do next? Can we even trust Emily?" He shook his head, heart racing, but steeled himself. "I don't know, but we have to find out, together." The questions loomed heavy in the air as they walked into the dim streets, uncertainty clinging to them like dust. What would happen next? Who was truly on their side? But as they looked back at the building, its windows flickering with chaos, they knew their story wasn't over yet. The shadows still danced behind the glass, whispering secrets yet to unfold. What awaited them in the future was a mystery. But one thing was clear: they wouldn't face it alone. And as the night deepened, they stepped forward, ready to peel back the layers of a world they barely understood. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help elevate this community. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait one more second to share.